Larry Tobin, retired TWA captain, is flying a 1927 Stearman C-3B. It's the oldest Stearman aircraft flying in the world. Ben Scott, Reno, Nevada, is flying a 1930 Stearman Junior Speed Mail. And all of these aircraft have carried mail. They're real significant parts of aviation history. And we see this as a tribute to the aviation design pioneers. With that said,
good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming today. First of all, I want to thank our brave pilots for making this trip today. Also, gentlemen, I want to welcome you to Bellefonte. I'm the postmaster here. My name is Greg Miller. I also want to welcome the American Philatelic Society, who graciously brought their display of some of their historical items that are on display over there at the tables. And gentlemen, we recognize that you have embarked on a historic journey. It's important and very historic to Bellefonte. You have taken to the skies once again to recreate the passion and spirit of those pioneers of aviation that they felt 90 years ago when they grabbed their first sacks of mail and climbed into their cockpits. It's challenged and changed mail service forever by flying their precious cargo from coast to coast. So it's my pleasure again to welcome you to Bellefonte. It's my honor to present pilots Anderson Pemberton with these memorials. Photograph of the memorial that's on display down at the American Philatelic Society here in Bellefonte.
thank you very much. Beautiful. Thank you.
And Larry Tobin.
Thank you much. Appreciate it.
Now I'd like to introduce Addison Pemberton again. He has some history about aviation mail.
Thank you. I also neglected to introduce one of our most significant members, Al Holloway. And Al Holloway has the wonderful talent to keep these old airplane engines running. And
We love Al.
without Al, we wouldn't fly Hell Stretch, I'll tell you that. So we brought our mechanic along with us too, which is tremendous. But digress for just a moment. The onset of airmail service in the U.S. was in 1918. One of the pioneers was a man named Max Miller. Max Miller flew into Bellefonte and decided that this would be a wonderful intermediate mail stop between New York and Cleveland. By 1921, the post office had pioneered the transcontinental airmail route. This was service from San Francisco to New York with 15 city stops, of which Bellefonte was one of those. In 1926, the post office decided that they would begin to issue contract airmail routes, CAM routes, or privatize the airmail carrying capability. And with that said, you'll note on our aircraft, Larry's and mine for instance, you'll see a CAM number, contract airmail. My aircraft was CAM 8. It was destined to fly between Seattle and San Diego. Larry's airplane is CAM 32. It flew between Spokane, Washington and Portland, Oregon. So let's think a minute about the significant contribution that the post office made. Prior to the airmail, aircraft after World War I were used primarily for entertainment, the barnstormers. They did wing walking, they entertained people. It was the post office that had the vision to appreciate the capability of the airplane. It was then the post office that issued contract airmail routes, which spawned the infancy of commercial aviation that we know today. There's a third faction to this story. By 1925, the Transcon was lit coast to coast. Every 10 miles was an airway beacon, and the pilots would fly from beacon to beacon. They had to maintain visual contact with the ground at all times, or they risk, a fatal crash. So let's appreciate all those folks with 260 airway beacons that had to keep these things lit every night. Appreciate the small town. the small community, the small family, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, out here in Sunbury, for instance, on a stormy night, when Mr. Jones is sick, and Mrs. Jones in her nightie and slippers has to climb up the top of Sunbury Hill to put a new light bulb in that beacon so that the pilots would be safe that night. So I don't think the large population of the U.S. today even appreciates the contribution that all this infrastructure gave, plus the airmail system itself, as well as the designers of these aircraft. And that's our mission statement today, is to share that with you folks. I don't know, Ben, do you want to say anything at all? You're a great talker. You say great things.
Pemberton for president.
I second the presidential.
Yeah, right, there you go. Thank you for your interest. You're more than welcome to look at these airplanes. Our dream is to see these things shared with the public. One more quick story. My father grew up in Greenfield, Iowa, between Des Moines and Omaha. And every day he saw a Boeing 40 in the 1920s fly over his farm. When I was a small kid growing up, he told me bedtime stories about Boeing 40s that he could set his watch by every day, driving all over his farm. So I don't know, appreciate the impact that we have on our children by telling them some bedtime story. They turn into some middle-aged 55-year-old man driving a Boeing 40 with his buddies across the country. I don't know. But with that said, thank you very much, and we're more than willing to answer any questions you have. As you can see, we're very passionate about what we're doing. We're living the dream. This is something we want to do for a really long time. Thank you.